Now a special report from KARE 11 Investigates. In the Twin Cities, in the wake of George Floyd's murder. George Floyd! George Floyd! In the midst of a pandemic, crime spiked.
Attempted carjack on 40th and Pillsbury.
The same teenagers.
Gosh, he's so young.
Arrested again and again.
Why are the same kids over and over repeating the same crimes?
We also wanted to know why and discovered stunning data on repeat offenders.
What they're doing isn't working.
Gaps in mental health care driving juvenile crime.
There is no place for her.
Inhumane conditions at juvenile jails.
I was appalled.
And a system that instead of rehabilitating kids,
He definitely needs help,
too often is making them worse,
and it's nowhere to be found.
with devastating results. KARE 11 Investigates. Juvenile justice, failing victims, failing kids. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lauren Lemanchek. Like many of you, we were alarmed by the daily reports of crime in our community. But as we investigated, we noticed something. Many of those accused were painfully young. Many had diagnosed mental illness, and many were repeat offenders. Our system that was supposed to rehabilitate youth and protect the public was failing so many, including the kids you're about to meet. Dee Dee Jackson turned 17 full of hope.
She just was loved by everybody. She was very spunky.
Make a good wish.
But just 3 weeks after this party, she and friends got into a car with a boy from school named Jalen, a teen who'd been arrested over and over. The car was stolen, and according to a police report, when Jalen saw a squad car, he sped off, losing control. It was the last ride Dee Dee would ever take.
They declared her brain dead.
Her mother, heartbroken.
I mean, it's destroyed our family.
Jalen becoming another statistic in a Minnesota juvenile justice system that's too often failed the kids it aims to rehabilitate and their victims.
If the juvenile system wouldn't have failed Jalen wouldn't have been in that car to pick my daughter up.
It's a huge issue.
Crystal Police Chief Stephanie Revering has been disturbed by how young the kids are that she's arresting again and again.
We've seen juveniles over and over repeat violent crimes such as carjackings, robberies, and that type of thing.
She wanted to find out where the system was going wrong.
Have you been looking for data on recidivism?
Yeah, it's really, you can't find it anywhere, right?
She's right. We couldn't. And what we learned was shocking. The state doesn't keep track. So we did what they haven't. KARE 11 reporter Brandon Stahl dug through courthouse records, compiling the data. We found more than 200 juveniles in the metro who'd been charged with crimes since 2020, so serious that if they were adults, they'd go to prison. And it turns out 3 out of 4 of them are repeat offenders. Evidence that too often the system's efforts to rehabilitate kids failed. But why?
It scared the hell out of this kid.
For Jalen, the boy behind the wheel, his life had been on a collision course for years. His mom, Shavana, agreed to speak with us about his path.
We were homeless for a while. He hooked up with a friend, and they allowed him to stay there. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. Jalen started using drugs, drinking.
His first arrest came at 12 or 13, stealing cars from a junkyard, but there were few official consequences. And Shavana's reaction might surprise you.
A problem is they tapped him on the wrist, and they shouldn't.
She says she tried to steer him in a different direction, but in a neighborhood scarred by violence and with few supports, she felt helpless. So from age 16 to 17, Jalen would plead guilty to vehicle thefts, gun possession, a carjacking, a home invasion, and the crash that killed Dee Dee.
How do you feel as it just keeps kind of getting worse?
Terrified. I know where crime and criminals, where they go to the grave or they go to prison.
But court-ordered community programs hadn't seemed to work, or he didn't complete them. He once spent 6 months in Totem Town, a St. Paul juvenile facility. It wasn't until after the deadly crash that a judge sent him to the juvenile prison in Red Wing. But when he got out, little changed.
They get out here and reality smacks them in the face.
What do you mean by that?
We're poor. Most of the kids are poor. We come from a poor environment.
Records from that crash case show a young man struggling with trauma disorder, depression, mental health, and chemical use.
Over 70% of the kids in the juvenile justice system have one or more mental health diagnoses, and that has been true for decades.
Sue Abderholden from NAMI, the state's leading mental health advocacy group, says you can't talk about our juvenile justice system without addressing failures in our mental health systems, especially for children of color.
Typically for children, from BIPOC communities, children of color, the juvenile justice system is their mental health system because they've not been able to access services prior to that.
Judge Mark Ireland's seen that play out in his courtroom for years.
Things that have happened to those juveniles that I think for most people you can't even really imagine in terms of trauma that they've experienced.
And yet, for those teenagers in Minnesota, the number of secure residential treatment programs has been shrinking, not growing. Totem Town, the juvenile facility Jalen once went to, closed. So did the Hennepin County Homeschool.
You can't just have a system where you're either incarcerated at Red Wing or you're sent home and kind of you get a probation officer assigned to you. There has to be multiple options in between there.
Hi, Birdie.
Shavana now talks to her son from adult jail.
Okay, I love you more, baby. Keep your head up.
Where he faces years of prison time on a new gun charge. The very outcome Minnesota's juvenile justice system aims to avoid.
It's not what you wanted for him.
Of course not. Of course not. Never.
Failing kids like Jalen and victims like Dee Dee.
The system failed my daughter, yeah, absolutely. But somewhere along the line, they failed Jalen too. And that failure caused my daughter to die.
Coming up, a teenager with mental illness held in solitary confinement because there wasn't a treatment center in the state that would take him.
It's making his mental health illness worse.
When juvenile justice, failing victims, failing kids, continues. Behind these walls, a teenage boy was held alone, in isolation, day after day, night after night.
And he's very scared.
For up to 2 weeks at a time, the only way his mother Kielva or anyone else could talk to the boy, who was suicidal and sometimes violent, was through a 6 by 18-inch slit in a metal door.
I had to go visit him through this metal door with this little bitty, little latch on it. And so he's down on the floor. We're down on the floor talking through a latch.
He was on what is called a no-contact isolation.
His attorneys, Tracy Reed and Angela Bailey, longtime public defenders, have seen a lot. But what they saw this summer at the Hennepin County Juvenile Detention Center shocked even them.
Are those humane conditions?
No. I was appalled.
The story of how this boy wound up here began a long time ago. Life has never been easy for Kielva's son.
This is how I lived for 3 years.
A car his home for years.
We slept on top of each other.
Piled in on top of his mom and 5 siblings.
This is what kept us warm.
In elementary school, signs of mental illness.
He was jumping out of my moving vehicle, running into traffic.
By 11, a social worker called his symptoms unprecedented. Eventually diagnosed with ADHD, conduct disorder, mood dysregulation, intellectual disabilities, and PTSD.
Was it possible for your son to get mental health treatment while you were living in these conditions?
No, it was not.
At 12, charged with aggravated robbery. And since then, a cycle. Charged with at least a dozen more crimes, including aggravated robbery, fleeing police, assault, and gun possession. But never convicted. Each time, his severe mental illness led a judge to find him incompetent to stand trial.
I think he's been found incompetent over the years, probably 8 times.
And nearly always released back to his mother's care. This summer, a gun charge landed him back in the JDC. Still suffering with mental illness and on suicide watch. He punched a guard and wound up here, stuck for days in his cell. A form of juvenile solitary confinement Minnesota calls disciplinary room time.
He's being treated like an animal.
Experts like Brett Peterson, who runs juvenile detention centers, agree solitary confinement makes kids worse.
If you have a young person and they're placed into an institutional setting without the right type of treatment and care, they are not going to come out better because of that.
But KARE 11 Investigates has discovered putting kids in DRT is not only permitted in Minnesota, it's routine. In Hennepin County alone, since 2018, kids have been ordered to disciplinary room time for a day or more than 3,000 times. Nearly 300 times, kids have been isolated in their cells for 5 days or more at a time. Remember, most kids in juvenile jails live with mental illness.
That is so damaging to a developing brain. It's just damaging to the brain. So you're not going to make things better, you're going to make things worse. It's just not okay.
Advocates are proposing strict limits to the practice in Minnesota, but so far those reforms have died at the Capitol. Hennepin County refused an on-camera interview and would not address their use of isolation. In a statement, the county said, "We know the current juvenile justice system isn't perfect, but we're committed to the safety and well-being of all youth who are under our supervision," adding they also must respect the safety and well-being of the JDC staff.
It really traumatized him.
Meanwhile, Kielva worried solitary was only making her son more violent.
And it's just going to make him worse as far as when he comes out.
Here's the thing. Everyone from prosecutors to the judge to the defense seemed to agree what this teen needed was secure treatment. But there was nowhere for him to go, not even a facility the state spent millions to build. Coming up, a failure to provide care for kids who are mentally ill and violent that puts everyone at risk. A 16-year-old in solitary confinement, his mental health deteriorating.
The day that I met him in the JDC, staff asked me if I could get him to stop saying that he was going to kill himself in the facility.
But that just begs the question, why isn't this kid being placed in a psychiatric facility?
The answer? None would take him because of his violent past, a chronic failure in a system that's supposed to rehabilitate kids.
They are either unable or unwilling to take children with aggressive behaviors.
Instead of being confined to his cell, his lawyers suggested the only secure psychiatric hospital for children in all of Minnesota, located in Willmar. But it wasn't even an option. Why not? Turns out taxpayers pumped $39 million to expand and operate that hospital, 2 hours from the Twin Cities, in a town with a population of just 21,000. And now the state says it can't hire enough people to staff it. Even though records show it's officially licensed to handle 16 kids, right now it's treating an average of just 3 kids at a time.
Why is our only secure child and adolescent behavioral health hospital treating just 3 kids at a time?
It comes back to workforce. These are incredibly high need, acute cases. And that means that we need highly skilled, highly specialized staff that also care about kids.
It's not acceptable, especially when they built it to actually serve more children than that.
NAMI wanted that hospital built in the metro, near more qualified staff. Now they want state lawmakers to fund a new treatment facility for aggressive kids in the Twin Cities.
We need to build the places to take them. I mean, we really do.
The hospital is the most extreme example, but in Minnesota, treatment for kids in the juvenile justice system who live with mental illness has been outsourced to a patchwork of private centers, and they often reject kids who are violent or aggressive, like Kielva's son and Dawn's 15-year-old daughter.
I love her. I love her dearly.
A girl she adopted at age 7, but now fears.
It started with pulling my hair in a ponytail, smacking me.
She's threatened to kill you.
She has.
Her daughter has been diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder, PTSD, and conduct disorder.
My heart breaks for her.
By 12, the girl was hospitalized for mental illness. By 13, placed in juvenile detention for stabbing her mom. At 14, arrested again for breaking into a home. Since then,
we've been in and out of court so many times I can't even count.
When we met Dawn, the girl was in jail at the Dakota County Juvenile Service Center waiting for a mental health placement.
We don't want to see her at the JSC. We don't want her there. That is not the place for her, but there is no place for her. This is her room.
What her daughter needs is specialized long-term treatment in a place that can handle her behavior.
Psychiatric residential treatment facility.
Yes.
Psychiatric residential treatment facilities, or PRTFs, offer a higher level of care and are designed for kids like Dawn's daughter. But Minnesota has only 3 of them. One is Northwood Children's Services in Duluth.
That is the only one in the state that will accept her.
But there's a problem.
We have a 6 to 9 month wait list. It can be over a couple hundred kids at a time.
This is a typical room.
Northwood's CEO, Larry Pajari, started here as a counselor. He believes they can help kids like Dawn's daughter who've been rejected by most other treatment centers for their aggressive behaviors.
Do you accept a lot of kids who have had aggression and violence in their past?
Most of our kids are aggressive. That's why they're here.
The state authorized PRTFs like Northwood back in 2015 and set a goal of 300 beds by next year. So how serious is the shortage? Right now, there are just 46 staffed beds, and none of them are in the metro.
The state really needs to find ways to fund it. Kids deserve a chance.
A chance for Dawn's daughter, for whom years of failed treatments have added up.
She's further traumatized. She's becoming more unstable, more mentally ill.
Recently, she was released from jail again after a probation violation, sent home to her mom, who waits on edge for the treatment her daughter so desperately needs.
Our fear is that between now and then, something devastating is going to happen.
Coming up.
He didn't hit, he punched right in the head on the right side. Over and over.
911, what is the address of your emergency?
Still ahead, how a gap in our system ties judges' hands and leaves kids accused of violence without treatment or supervision.
What is the address of your emergency?
The emergency for Katie unfolding as the white car blocks her in.
Attempted carjack on 40th and Pillsbury.
They came to the window and pounding on the window, saying, "Get out, get out." I just laid on the horn.
Apparently scared off by the noise, eventually,
they rammed me.
They didn't get Katie's car, but a year later, she still hears the sound of her horn.
I was traumatized. I was pretty scared.
Just 2 months before that,
So they climbed through the living room windows.
Jean is disguising her identity out of fear after 2 teens broke in yelling.
Where's your stash?
And began to beat her.
He didn't hit, he punched right in the head on the right side. Over and over.
They took her phone and some money, leaving her with bruises and a brain bleed she discovered weeks later.
I could have died.
Prosecutors say the same 16-year-old was involved in both cases, part of an alleged crime spree last fall. But despite their trauma, when Katie and Jean saw him,
I just said, "Oh my gosh, he's so young."
So young. So young.
Even more shocked when they learned about his past. Not long before authorities say he attacked them, the teenager had been at the Hennepin County Juvenile Detention Center on armed robbery and gun charges. But a judge determined he was incompetent to stand trial and released him with no mandatory treatment.
They let him go to commit more crimes, and he did, and one of them was mine.
About 5 or 6 guys.
This case exposes a gap in Minnesota's juvenile justice system that ties judges' hands and leaves kids and victims vulnerable.
To understand why, you need to know a bit more about the juvenile system. A child is found incompetent to stand trial because of mental illness or because they don't have the intellectual capacity to understand the court process. When that happens, there are 3 options. Civil commitment for their mental illness. That rarely happens. The county can open a child protection case and work with their parents to provide services. Or they're simply released, the case suspended until they become competent. A KARE 11 investigation finds in 3 out of every 4 cases, that third option, simply releasing them without required treatment, is what happens in Minnesota.
If they would just release them, what are the kids supposed to do? They go back to the old way of life.
That's what happened with the boy accused of attacking Jean and Katie. Court records show he required treatment for his mental health dating back to elementary school. His grandma, Emma, says from 15 on, he was repeatedly arrested and just released to her care.
Did you feel like you couldn't control him?
There was no control.
When he was charged with aggravated robbery last summer and found incompetent to stand trial, under Minnesota law, the judge had to release him from juvenile detention.
If he's incompetent, where's the help at? I can't help him.
2 months later, police say, he broke into Jean's house.
We know that there are these cases that kind of sometimes are in that gap, right?
Last year, KARE 11 series The Gap highlighted how the adult system was failing to treat and failing to protect. Ramsey County Judge Japal Harris says that same gap still exists between criminal court and child protection.
Why is that? Well, unless a child is civilly committed, once they've been found incompetent, a juvenile court judge doesn't have the option to force them to get treatment, even if they fear he or she might reoffend.
Ultimately, as judges, we are bound by the rules.
And even if they could require treatment, as this investigation has shown, in Minnesota, there's nowhere for kids to go.
Does that pose a danger to the public?
Anytime you have an untreated individual, whether it's a youth or an adult who has engaged in behavior that is dangerous, that is a danger.
How many cases are we talking about? KARE 11 obtained data showing the number is rising every year. 304 kids declared incompetent in 2021 alone, most released back to their guardians.
I had no sense of security after that.
A year after Jean and Katie were victims of crime, fear remains. But so does compassion.
I can't stop tearing up from it. It's so sad to think that he could have been saved.
But he wasn't. Because of a gap in Minnesota's system, instead of treatment he needed, he found his way to Katie and Jean.
I'm very sad.
That gap, yet another way Minnesota's juvenile justice system fails victims and kids.
A task force is meeting right now to figure out how to close that gap that lets incompetent juveniles go free without treatment. And juvenile justice advocates are proposing a series of bills involving solitary confinement and mental health treatment. Changes they believe will help kids and make our communities safer. For all of us at KARE 11, I'm Lauren Lemanchek. Thanks for joining us.